Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Jupiter, square, inconjunct, or opposition the natal ascendant. Well, anyway, people, first thing is when you have this transit, one can experience perhaps philosophical differences and discrepancies with others. These could be people that are in like a Jupiter like profession. It could be lawyers, attorneys, people in the legal system in general. It could be paralegals, teachers, professors, or even publishers, or somebody that's in the travel industry. Now, these people may be adversarial, or one or more of these people may be during this transit, and it may be a little bit harder to project jocularity and happiness and enjoyment outwardly during this transit. And you may be a little bit more inclined to make more like tactless, blunt remarks during this time. And it could also be you might even project an even a sanctimonious attitude, or even a superiority complex during this time. Now, when you have this transit, this could also be a strong distortion and vacillation of this Jupiter energy. You might project a lot of exuberance and enthusiasm one moment, and the next moment you might seem like real disconsolate or despondent, overly pessimistic. You may go back and forth like a pendulum between strong optimism and being exceptionally pessimistic. Now, this too, when you have this transit as well, depending on the house that it's in, you could be really, dominated by others' interests. Remember that Jupiter could be paradoxical. Jupiter, is really a very benign and benevolent planet, but it can enlarge and expand things. And let's say, for example, you have a transit square to your ascendant from your natal fourth house from Jupiter, and say transit Jupiter is in your fourth and making a square to your ascendant. Well, you might be dominated by family interests, or even generally the mother, and it could be in just home activities in general, and it might be depriving you of these, I guess you could say, somewhat egocentric interests, or interests pertaining to the self, which could cause some exasperation and turmoil and tension within you. And let's say, for another example, let's say that you have a transit Jupiter, let's say it's opposite your ascendant in transit. Let's say you have transit Jupiter in the seventh house, opposite your natal ascendant. Well, you might be dominated by perhaps activity, maybe with a you're trying to do many things for a significant other, and could be depriving you of your time doing things that are connected with yourself, your own personal interests, and that could be causing exasperation and turmoil, perhaps, and even some tension. Now, another thing too is that with this transit, you might be more inclined to be seeking perhaps optimism and hope from other people due to encouragement from others, rather than deriving it from within. Let's say you have transit Jupiter in your seventh house making an opposition to your ascendant. It could be perhaps you're seeking some positive statements from a significant other. It could be, or somebody, let's say you're in a partnership with. Let's say if you have an opposition, let's say you have Jupiter in the sixth house making either an opposition or inconjunct to your natal ascendant, well, you might be seeking this positivity, so to speak, from people that are in your workplace, if applicable. Say if you are at some workplace and you have fellow employees, or if you're, say, you're a supervisor, maybe even from subordinate workers. So really, I think what's important to remember during this transit is that you need to get happiness more from within. Don't be dependent on others. Someone said to me one time, if I was dependent on others to make me happy, I'd never be happy. I guess that's a very good point, and a lot of us really know that, but we don't always apply it, unfortunately, in actual life. And if you have this transit as well, I mean, I think especially if you have it coming from the sixth house, you might be doing so much, say, for people in the, let's say, your workplace and being of service to others, because the sixth house can be associated with service. Um, and let's say it's making it either the opposition to the ascendant or the inconjunct to the ascendant. You might be so doing so much and being of service to other people where it could almost come across where you might even seem officious to them, even if you're well-meaning during this time and you're trying to really, you're striving to help others and be of service to them, and there's no malicious intent. It's not to get somebody exasperated or agitated. It might come across that way, and at the same time, this will be all the service to others could be really taking away from yourself. And there's nothing wrong with helping others and putting an abundance of energy into helping others, but there comes a time when you got to attend to your own needs as well. So really too, what's important as well to keep in mind, people, if you have this, say you have this transit, I think especially if it's in your sixth house and making it inconjunct to your natal ascendant, is that there can be some health issues during this time. Keep in mind, as I stated before, Jupiter can be rather paradoxical, though mainly, I mean, its influence is generally very benign. You have to remember that it can enlarge things as well, and it can give you health issues during this time. I have Jupiter inconjunct my natal ascendant. In my natal chart, Jupiter is in my sixth house, and it inconjuncts my ascendant. Jupiter is in my chart is in Libra, and I have issues with my lower back area, which is of course associated with Libra. So, and really, if, like, say if you had that in your, let's say in a transit, let's say that you had, let's say transit Jupiter as an example. It's a good example to use, I guess, because I have this natally. Let's say you have transit Jupiter in Libra in your sixth house, and it makes an inconjunct your ascendant. It could be a time where you might be a little bit more susceptible to, say, a Libra-like injury, such as the lower back injury. You might be a little bit more susceptible at that time too. And keep in mind, I understand when Jupiter transits the sixth house, it could be a good period for health as well. So it's not always bad, but I think you have to be especially careful though when the transit makes the inconjunct to your ascendant, and even possibly the opposition in the sixth house to the ascendant. When it's on its way out, right before it leaves the sixth house, it makes an opposition to your ascendant. So you have to look at that as well as possible times where you could have some health issues. Another example, before I conclude with this segment, is that let's say that transit Jupiter is in your sixth house, and let's say it makes an inconjunct to a Leo ascendant. I mean, maybe it could be from doing too much at work, could lead to possible heart issues. I mean, I think stress, overworking, doing an abundance of work could lead to stress, and I think may lead to possible heart issues. So I think that would be another example right there. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen. That something like that couldn't happen to somebody that didn't have a Leo ascendant, but I think there's a greater propensity if your ascendant is Leo, because of course that Leo is one of the parts of the body associated. The heart is one of the body parts associated with the zodiac sign Leo. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for transit Jupiter square inconjunct or opposition the natal ascendant. Stay tuned next time where I'll be talking about transit Saturn conjunct the natal ascendant. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.